December 15th, 1944. The frozen approaches to Bastogne, Belgium. Oberst Hans von Luck raised his binoculars toward an American tank column sliding over the snow. His 21st Panzer Division had stalked Shermans for 3 years, from North Africa and Italy to the Western Front. He knew their soft spots by heart. Thin armor, a modest gun, a habit of burning when struck. Yet something unsettled the veteran as he watched M4A3E8 Shermans push through the morning haze. "Herr Oberst," his intelligence officer said, "our captured manuals show no major upgrades to enemy armor." Von Luck lowered the glasses, bothered more by what he sensed than what he saw. These Shermans behaved differently. Their guns tracked while rolling, a feat German doctrine called impossible. Crews seemed to find targets faster, shoot sooner, and live through hits that should have killed them. And still, German engineers studying captured tanks reported nothing transformative, nothing that explained why these supposedly inferior machines kept dismantling the Panzer arm. What von Luck could not know was that each Sherman crossing those Belgian fields carried secrets German intelligence never cracked, technologies and design choices so far ahead that even examined hulls hid their true edge. Before we open today's World War II secret, if you like digging into overlooked battles and hidden details, tap like and subscribe for more untold wartime history. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always amazed how the past connects people everywhere. The first secret began with a gyroscope spinning at 12,000 RPM, buried in the Sherman's turret. As Stephen Zaloga notes, 2003, the Westinghouse gun stabilizer was among the most sophisticated combat devices of the war. U.S. Ordnance records show it let gunners keep aim even while moving, or right after halting. The stabilizer used a gyroscope to hold the barrel steady in the vertical plane, countering bumps and pitch over rough ground. Army tests in 1943 found that when set up correctly and used by trained crews, it delivered a vital edge, a fast first shot the instant the tank paused. If the hull rocked from fire or terrain, the gun stayed close to line. German crews, trained for long aiming routines, suddenly faced Sherman gunners who could shoot accurately within seconds of stopping. A captured Tiger gunner, Obergefreiter Klaus Weber, told interrogators, "American tanks fire the moment they halt. We need 30 seconds at minimum. They hit in 5. This should not be possible." What Weber didn't grasp was that German gunners relied on manual compensation and sight settling. The Sherman's stabilizer did that work mechanically, better than a human could. When Germans captured Shermans in 1943-44, they noted the stabilizer, but failed to grasp its operational meaning or reproduce its intricate gyro systems. The second secret was the ammo stowage, its impact only clear by 1944. Early Shermans were infamous for burning after penetration, earning the Ronson slur from German crews. American engineers were already fixing the core problem. The wet ammunition stowage introduced on the M4A1-76U was a leap in survivability that German analysts never fully read. A 1945 U.S. Army study reported only 10 to 15% of wet-stow Shermans burned after penetration versus 60 to 80% in earlier dry stowage tanks. Rounds sat in sealed boxes surrounded by a liquid mix of water, ethylene glycol, and rust inhibitor, sold as ammodamp. The liquid formed a barrier that kept propellant from igniting when hit. Tests showed most losses came from ammunition fires, not fuel explosions. German engineers inspecting wet-stow Shermans noticed the liquid tanks, but misread them as coolant for ammo. OKW Technical Digests, cited by Thomas Jentz, 1998, show specialists mistook fire suppression for heat management. They assumed the Americans were curing overheating, not preventing propellant cook-offs. That misread cost them. U.S. tanks gained resilience while German vehicles kept suffering ammo fires that killed seasoned crews. The third secret lived in the optics, especially a periscope system that gave U.S. crews unprecedented awareness. Its roots were Polish. Engineer Rudolf Gundlach's periscope, shared with allies before Poland fell. Richard Hunnicutt, 1978, notes the Gundlach design let commanders watch a full 360 discs from inside using a single rotating unit. It marked a shift in design, awareness over extra armor. Later, Shermans added a dual magnification periscope. Technical manuals in the National Archives describe two built-in scopes, a 1X optic with a 40-Tada Stellung field for close targets, and a 6X with an 11 field for long shots. Crews could fight near and far without swapping gear or losing the picture. Mechanical linkages tied the periscope directly to the mount, turning observation into accurate fire quickly. German philosophy prized superb standalone instruments, but they weren't integrated into a seamless system like the Sherman's fire control. Captured German commanders often wondered how Americans maintained such swift target acquisition while their own crack gunners struggled under the same conditions. The fourth secret was philosophical: modular production and continuous improvement. While German engineers chased radical designs that disrupted output, American manufacturers iterated, refining without scrapping lines. Arthur Herman, 2012, highlights how Sherman production leaned on standardization, interchangeability, and steady upgrades. Armor layouts, suspension strength, wet stowage, and protection improved under the same family name. The M4 composite is a case in point, cast front hull joined to a welded rear, cutting cost without cutting combat value. U.S. factories built tanks faster than German guns could kill them. German intelligence kept comparing spec sheets instead of grasping the systemic advantage of U.S. industry. The result reached well beyond single duels. German plants fought constant redesigns that tangled logistics. U.S. lines hit efficiencies the Germans first dismissed as propaganda, until the battlefield confirmed the numbers. Panzer officers were facing not just tanks, but a whole system their doctrine hadn't anticipated. The Shermans' secrets added up to more than gadgets. They expressed a new kind of industrial warfare that would reshape doctrine for generations. The fifth secret looked like a simple puff of white smoke and rattled Panzer crews more than any AP round. Zaloga, 2003, documents how Sherman crews weaponized 75 milliliters white phosphorus shells, nominally marking rounds, in ways German tactics hadn't foreseen. Intended to mark targets for artillery, WP found another use against heavy German armor. Field reports from the 3rd Armored Division show that when WP hit Panther or Tiger hulls, the burning compound clung to surfaces and filled the area with blinding, choking smoke. The shock effect was instant. Crews who trusted their armor found their excellent Zeiss optics blinded. Worse, the tank's protective overpressure ventilation drew the smoke inside. A captured Panther driver, Obergefreiter Heinrich Müller, recalled, "The American shell makes white fire that burns eyes and throat. Our ventilation turns into an enemy, pulling the smoke in. We can't see or breathe. The tank becomes a prison." Systems meant to defend against gas sucked in WP fumes. Fear of fire plus suffocation often forced crews to bail out from intact machines. 4th Armored Division logs note multiple cases where WP forced abandonment rather than mechanical kill. Recovery teams later found these Tigers and Panthers sound but stinking of phosphorus. Their crews had fled their own air systems. The 6th Secret ran through the Sherman's wiring, an electrical architecture that brought industrial precision into combat. Where German designs leaned on manual and mechanical systems, Shermans used electrical and hydraulic aids to automate key tasks and cut workload. Ordnance manuals, 1944, describe a hydraulically driven turret, giving traverse speeds and control German crews cranking by hand couldn't match. Per Hunnicutt, 1978, the stabilizer, periscopes, sights, and turret drive tied together through coordinated circuits, what we'd now call an early fire control computer. OKW reports analyzed by Jentz showed German mechanics struggled with captured Sherman electrics. They could service engines and transmissions, but the wiring, relays, and diagnostics exceeded their training and tool sets. Hauptmann Friedrich Weber wrote, "The enemy tank contains more circuits than our radios. Switches and relays command everything. When these fail, the vehicle is disabled in ways we cannot repair." What looked like a weakness became an American strength. U.S. crews trained on electrical troubleshooting, and parts were mass-produced and stocked. German forces lacked both training and spares, so captured Shermans became liabilities once electrical issues appeared. The 7th Secret was human, ergonomics, and crew-centric design, ideas German practice often subordinated to raw performance. The Sherman's 69-inch turret ring, Aberdeen, 1942, gave more working room than many peers. Zaloga's comparisons note early T-34s at 56 inches and later 85mm models at 63. That extra space paid off in combat. Crews coordinated better under stress or wounds. Tasks that were awkward in cramped German turrets became routine in Shermans. Ammo handling, target handoff, and maintenance all benefited from room to move. German interrogations repeatedly mentioned the Sherman's better working environment. Obergefreiter Hans Kruger, who served in a captured M4A1 with Panzer Regiment 130 during the Bulge, said the American tank felt spacious. Our Panzer I-4 demands careful movements to avoid hitting kit or people. The American tank allows normal motion, even under fire. Comfort extended to the driver's station and instruments. U.S. automotive know-how created positions that cut fatigue on long hauls. German layouts, often by weapons engineers, left crews worn out after extended moves. The 8th Secret was a deep design choice. Reliability and field repair beat boutique performance. German engineers pursued excellence in parts. Americans optimized the whole. Sherman powertrains, validated at Aberdeen, scaled proven commercial tech for military use. The result? Vehicles that ran for long stretches with little maintenance, fought through minor damage, and were quickly fixed when something serious broke. Major Ernst Hoffmann of German technical intelligence grew to respect the approach. Enemy tanks show automotive excellence we cannot equal. Parts may be less refined, but integration and reliability surpass ours. Maintenance is simpler than our designs demand. Operationally, Sherman units kept more runners than the Panzers. German tanks needed specialists and special tools. Sherman crews handled most fixes with standard gear. In long pushes, U.S. armored divisions stayed moving for weeks. Panzer divisions often needed maintenance pauses after a few days, amplifying American numbers and eroding German strength into 1945. The cumulative effect of these hidden advantages turned an inferior tank into a system that broke German armored superiority. Each edge boosted the others, creating synergy beyond any single tweak. The ninth secret was what German engineers waved off as American overcomplexity. The Shermans integrated fire control that fused multiple advanced subsystems into one fighting tool. Hunnicutt, 1978, describes mid- and late-war Shermans, whose final configuration German examiners encountered but failed to duplicate. Hydraulic traverse, stabilizer, periscopes, and telescopes worked together through robust linkages and precision fits. The fast turret got guns on target. The stabilizer kept aim while rolling. Dual magnification periscopes let crews spot at any range. Most important, the system behaved as one, not as competing tasks. Hauptmann Klaus Richter reported to OKW, "The American tank is a complete fighting system. Each part strengthens the others. Our vehicles feature excellent elements, but they act alone. The enemy has achieved coordination we cannot copy." German thinking prized peak parts, superb optics, thick armor, big guns, but lacked integration. A Tiger's rangefinder was useless if aim couldn't be held on the move. A Panther's gun did little if hydraulic traverse failed and crews had to muscle the turret under fire. The Sherman's integrated approach meant merely good parts could outperform superior ones when combined. That system's mindset would shape post-war tank design, insight the Germans only fully absorbed after the war. The 10th secret was evolutionary design that folded improvements into the line without breaking production, supply, or training. Herman, 2012, shows how manufacturers rolled changes while keeping commonality. The Westinghouse stabilizer is a prime example. Second-generation units on large-hatch Shermans were simplified and improved, easier to set up and maintain. The Army backed it with training so crews could exploit it. Lessons from the field fed straight into variants without trashing infrastructure. Wet stowage, better fire control, revised armor arrangements, and mechanical refinements slotted into ongoing builds. German programs chasing revolutions spawned all new vehicles needing fresh training, parts, tools, and tactics. Jentz, 1998, notes that while such leaps sometimes made a better single tank, they unraveled logistics and slowed real progress. Oberst Wilhelm von Thoma, captured in Tunisia, put it this way: "The Americans improve tanks as they improve automobiles. Small steps, constant refinement, always building on the last. We redesign from scratch. Their way yields better results with less turmoil." By 1945, late Shermans embodied 4 years of combat learning, yet stayed familiar. A crew trained on a 1942 M4A1 could run a 1945 M4A3E8 despite real gains in gun, armor, and mechanics. The 11th secret was durability and fixability, giving U.S. units readiness rates the Germans couldn't match. Zaloga, 2003, notes Sherman drivetrains followed automotive principles that favored reliability over spec sheet bragging rights. Robust construction let tanks limp home riddled with holes. Bent track shoes and scuffed armor, damage that often sidelined German vehicles. More importantly, systems were built for field repair with standard kits. Crews learned practical troubleshooting, and parts were standardized and stocked. German crews needed specialists to tend fragile high-tolerance systems. Panthers and Tigers demanded precise adjustment and exact parts often unavailable forward. Major Hans Kessler wrote after the war, "Our tanks were superior when they ran, but they needed constant expert care. American tanks seemed crude, yet kept operating through damage and neglect that would stop ours." That reliability magnified U.S. numbers and bled German armor through 1944-45. Panzer divisions often hovered near 50% operational. U.S. armored divisions routinely stayed at 85% or better. The 12th secret was subtle but decisive. Crew comfort and fatigue control that enabled operations Germans couldn't sustain. Hunnicutt's work shows American designers knew effectiveness hinged on human endurance in long fights. Sherman interiors had ventilation, heat, and lighting that eased long missions. The spacious turret cut claustrophobia and strain. Even details like seats and control layout preserved alertness. German tanks, tuned for short blitzkrieg thrusts, gave comfort little thought. Long operations in Panthers or Tigers drained crews with heat, fumes, and cramped spaces, hurting performance right when it mattered. Obergefreiter Werner Schmidt, who drove both German and captured American tanks with Panzer Regiment 4 during the Bulge, said, "The American tank rides like a truck, decent seats, visibility, room. Our Panzer IV demands constant care to avoid collisions inside. After 8 hours, we're exhausted. They stay sharp." In the mobile fights of 1944-45, U.S. spearheads could push for days while staying effective. German counterpunches needed rest, letting Americans dig in and reset. The 13th and final secret stitched all the others together. The Sherman as a complete system marrying industry, technology, training, and doctrine. From factory to front, the family worked as one. Multiple variants rolled off lines with shared parts. Training moved across models without starting over. Supply sent standard components worldwide. Maintenance procedures stayed consistent. German intelligence pored over hundreds of captured tanks, yet missed the big picture, comparing specs instead of seeing the system that made U.S. armor dominant. The payoff outgrew any duel. Panzer leaders faced not just more tanks or better ones, but a method of mechanized war their doctrine hadn't imagined. Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, in his final report before his death in October 1944, admitted, "The enemy has done what we thought impossible, tanks that are individually adequate but systemically superior. We cannot beat this with tactics or courage alone." The Sherman secrets were more than clever hardware. They reflected a revolution in industrialized war that permanently altered military thought. German engine, the Sherman's greatest secret, wasn't a single device. It was the recognition that modern war rewards complete systems, not isolated parts. The methodical collapse of German armored doctrine began with an overlooked detail of style, ultimately more decisive than any single breakthrough. David Fletcher, 1989, notes that the Sherman's supply chain integration was a strategic weapon German intelligence undervalued despite detailed captures. U.S. logisticians knew that real effectiveness depended on availability across theaters. From the start, the Sherman family shared components, ammo, and procedures across variants. what analysts now call the first truly global armored system. Manuals in the National Archives show Sherman variants in the Pacific shared over 80% parts with those in Europe. An engine from Detroit fit tanks in Burma, Italy, or France without modification. Ammunition produced in Pennsylvania worked the same worldwide. German development, by contrast, spawned logistical tangles. Jentz, 1998, counts 30-plus tank and assault gun types in service by 1944, each with special spares, ammo, and training. A Panzer IV crew couldn't jump to a Panther without major retraining. Tiger parts wouldn't fit other fleets. Oberst Heinrich Eberbach wrote after the war, "We had technically superior tanks, but our logistics buckled under complexity. The Americans ran essentially one family with minor variants. We managed dozens, each with unique needs." Standardization compounded advantage over time. U.S. divisions kept readiness high because parts, ammo, and trained people transferred smoothly. Panzer units decayed as special spares ran out and crews couldn't shift between types. The effect scaled from skirmishes to campaigns. U.S. forces sustained momentum for weeks because logistics worked globally. German counterblows often stalled when specialized parts failed and couldn't be replaced. The 14th secret was what Germans dismissed as waste: design a tolerance for field mods and crew improvisation. Zaloga, 2003, describes how Sherman crews routinely tweaked their tanks with local materials, improving combat value without breaking maintenance rules or supply chains. 3rd Armored Division files record hundreds of crew-driven changes, from extra plates to rearranged stowage. These weren't stifled, they were documented, creating a culture of continuous battlefield improvement German doctrine couldn't mirror. German vehicles, built to tight specs, didn't tolerate unauthorized changes without risking reliability or voiding support. Crews who improvised faced discipline, and the machines often suffered for it. Major Robert Earl, a Sherman commander, recalled in 1947, "Our boys were urged to improve their tanks with whatever they could find: sandbags, salvaged plate, custom mounts. The tanks got better with experience. German crews weren't allowed that freedom." Successful field hacks fed back into official variants. German formations, constrained by rigid specs and unique parts, remained static, even with superior single-vehicle traits. Sherman units became learning organizations that adapted in real time. The 15th secret drew on American industrial psychology, an operator-first mindset that put crew effectiveness above theoretical peak metrics. Hunnicutt, 1978, underlines that the tank was a human-machine system, and the people determined the outcome. The secrets inside every Sherman were bigger than any one invention. They proved that victory goes to nations that build, sustain, and keep improving full fighting systems, not isolated platforms. German analysts, despite reams of captured data, never grasped that America had redefined armored war through industrial philosophy. Those lessons shaped militaries for decades. The Sherman's greatest secret wasn't a gadget. It was the system.